Hi friends, and welcome to Crimes with Cole. So hello. How are you guys doing today? I hope you guys all are having an amazing day and an amazing week thus far. So, in today's case, do I have a story for you? Today, we will be talking about Dorothy Marie Robarts. Dorothy, who went by the name Marie, was accused of poisoning her father at the age of 16. Now, Mary grew up in Fort Worth, Texas. She was a very beautiful and bright girl. She was extremely smart and had plans to attend medical school. She wanted to become a pathologist. She was an immaculate student, always turning her work in on time and making good grades. She was never in any trouble, and in fact, she even won part in her high school production of Shakespeare's Hamlet. Marie was said to just be one of those girls that just went after her dreams. She was just driven, and people wanted to be friends with her because they knew that she was on the path to success. She had all of her ducks in a row, and she was going nowhere except to the top. The type of kid that you want your kid to be friends with. That was Marie. She didn't date much, although she had beautiful brown hair and mesmerizing brown eyes and had legs that looked like they came off of a model on a runway. She was a beautiful and stunning girl. But, she had her priorities set, and that was to go to medical school. So, what led her to become a killer? Marie was born to Beth and Stephen. She was an only child. Beth was president of National Honor Society and a track star back when she was in high school. She married her high school sweetheart right after they graduated, Stephen. And Stephen was said to be a very attractive guy. He was 6'4", muscular and lean with dark curly hair. He was one of the best looking guys in school. Once the two had graduated and married in 1974, Stephen had joined the Navy for a 4-year tour. In 1976, Dorothy Marie was born and forever filled their hearts with love and joy. Now, while their hearts were filled with love and joy from little Marie, the couple couldn't help but find themselves at a fork in the road. The relationship fell rocky when Stephen's behavior started becoming erratic. He became delusional and jealous, and he was battling depression after coming back from being on tour. And with his highs and lows in their relationship, it just fell apart. And in 1980, Beth had separated from Stephen, taking Marie with her. In 1981, Beth had already remarried a former Navy petty officer named Frank Burroughs. She had met Frank while she was married to Stephen, and they were stationed in Florida. During that time, nothing between Frank and Beth ever came about. However, once Frank had left the Navy, he became a police officer in the town of Granbury. That is where Beth had lived with Marie. The two had ran into each other, went on a date, caught some feelings, and fell in love. Now, Frank was a very protective father to a little boy from a previous relationship, and he enjoyed the idea of having a family with Beth and being a father figure to Marie. Now, Marie was only 4 years old when her mother had married Frank, and Frank had said that Marie called himself and Stephen both dad. Marie also saw her father, Stephen, once or twice a month growing up. it wasn't until her adolescent years that problems started rising. All through Marie's childhood, her and her mother always had a very close relationship. A lot of times people would describe them as sisters, like that type of bond that you tell each other everything, you tell each other your secrets, you know what the other one's thinking. And, they were just extremely close with one another. Frank and Beth had established a rule for both Marie and Frank's son that if either child were to move out of the house and live with the other parent, they would not be allowed to move back in. This was Frank's way of blending two divorced families. He said this would prevent the children from playing, each parent, from going back and forth in between the two. A few days before Marie's 16th birthday, she came home and found her stepfather having an affair with another woman. Marie hated Frank for that. She told her mother that she needed to leave him. But Beth accepted responsibility for Frank's actions. She had picked up a job working in the emergency room at the hospital, and her work became her priority. And she started lacking in her marriage. And Frank started acting out, seeking attention elsewhere. Beth had confronted Frank about the affair, and the two had decided that they were going to work things out. Beth loved Frank. She wanted to be with him. She knew he was a good man. She just knew that she had put her marriage on the back burner, and an affair was the result of that. Crappy, but that's what happened. Marie did not accept that answer. She wasn't going to accept that answer. She felt her mother needed to leave Frank. She started acting out. She would disrespect Frank any chance she got. She would not clean her room when he asked her. She would talk back. She had simply just withdrew from everybody in the family. And Frank would later go on to say at the trial that he had destroyed his family, that his actions of doing that was the result of the disrespect from Marie that caused the ripple effect in the family. Because remember, he's been her stepfather since she was 4 years old, and she's now 16. Beth had decided Marie should go live with her grandparents, with Beth's parents in Fort Worth, which was 45 minutes away from where they had currently lived. So she packed up her bags and she moved in with her grandma and grandpa. 5 days later, Marie took all the money she had and she got a cab back to Granbury. Marie wanted to move back in. Oh, bless her. But Frank had already laid down the law. If a child moved out, they would be forbidden to move back in. This rule had applied to his own son, who had moved out and moved in with his mother during his rebellion years. And the same rule applied to Marie. That's only fair. The kids knew the consequences to that action. Beth says that she remembers it being an awful scene. They were all in the front yard screaming at one another. She was crying. Marie was crying. Marie just wanted to come back home. But Beth sided with her husband and told Marie that she could not return. She had called Stephen and told him he needed to come take Marie. And Beth's thought process was that if Marie moved in with Stephen, that Frank would rethink his decision and allow Marie to move back in. Give it a few months, allow everything to calm down, and it would be back to how it was. That was the thought process, okay? Not that Marie would make the decision that she had ended up making. Why Beth did not make Marie move back in with her grandparents, I'm not sure. But Marie, at the age of 16, ended up moving in with her father. This caused Marie to see her mother as abandoning her, and that Frank was happy to see her go. A psychologist named Randall Price would later come on to say that this act grew jealousy between the three of them. Marie was jealous that Frank got to stay with her mom, and Frank may have been jealous of the bond between Beth and Marie. And who knows, maybe that's why he wanted more attention from someone else. However, Stephen was excited. He was so excited that Marie was coming to stay with him. Stephen had recently began dating a woman named Sandra, and she was a single mother that lived in the same apartment complex. And he now had a steady job carrying mail for the U.S. Post Services. His behavior was no longer, highs and lows. And he had really just entered a good phase in life. Stephen had applied to upgrade his 1-bedroom apartment into a 2-bedroom apartment so that Marie could have her own room. And he was just so eager to please Marie. Anything Marie wanted, Stephen was there to give it to her. But according to the letters that Marie had wrote her mother and the phone calls every day, she hated her life. She hated her life at her father's house. She had to sleep in a rollaway bed that was in the dining room while they were, in the waiting process of getting the 2-bedroom apartment. He didn't have any homemaking skills. The kitchen was not well equipped, and he never cleaned the apartment. She even wrote her mother telling her that she felt suicidal, that she hated her new school, and she wanted to come back home. Beth thought Marie was just being an over-dramatic teenager. After a few months of living with her father, Beth felt reassured that the move was the best thing for Marie. Her grades were improving. Her teachers said that she was kind, loving, sweet, a great student. They also commented saying that they had heard Marie making comments about how she wanted to move back in with her mom and have her old life back. Marie was always well behaved at her dad's house, though, according to Sandra, the dad's girlfriend. Sandra would later go on to say that she was everything you would want in a teenage girl. And while Marie seemed to be adapting well to her new life with her dad, she was constantly thinking of ways to ruin it, to move back in with her mom. In February 1993, Marie had poured barium acetate into a napkin and stuck it into her bag one day in chemistry class. She decided that on the night of February 18th, she would put the barium acetate into her father's refried beans. If he were to become ill enough, she would be forced to go back and live with her mom. After he finished his refried beans, he had gone to church that Wednesday night. It wasn't even an hour later when he had returned due to a stomach ache. Marie went over to Sandra's apartment and let her know that her dad was not feeling well and was vomiting. Marie decided that she would stay at Sandra's apartment with Sandra's younger son while Sandra went over to check on Stephen. When Sandra got there, Stephen started complaining that he felt stiff. He felt his arms and his legs getting stiff, and he couldn't swallow. So Sandra rang 911 as she saw Stephen foaming at the mouth, as his eyes are starting to gaze over and he was just staring into space. Ooh. Time the paramedics arrived, Stephen's throat was completely closed. They were unable to get an oxygen tube down his throat to keep him alive. At this time, Marie comes back to the apartment, stood in the doorway with just this blank stare on her face, just shocked to see her father dying. She didn't intend to kill him, but only to make him sick. Sandra grabbed Marie, gave her a hug, comforting her, trying to block the view from her dad. It was later ruled that Stephen had died from a heart attack. Beth and Frank later arrived at the hospital to pick Marie up that night. While Marie stood dazed beside the casket at her father's funeral a few days later, her mother had pulled her off to the side to let her know that she was moving to Florida and taking Marie with her. She and Frank were still having problems, and she decided to leave. She got a job offer in Florida, and she and Marie would soon be moving. Marie couldn't believe the plan that her mother had kept from her. She had just killed her father, so she could go live with her mother, and the entire time, her mother had already been planning for them to move to Florida. By the end of March, Beth and Marie had moved to Panama City Beach. And even though this was exactly what Marie had wanted, she had fell into a deep depression. Some days, she couldn't even get out of bed. Beth sent Marie to counseling, which seemed to help a little bit. In June, Frank came to Florida, and he wanted to patch things up with Beth. He swore he was going to do what it took to fix their marriage. Giving him the benefit of the doubt, Beth took him back. And Marie was ready to accept Frank back too, after all he had put her mother through. But 3 weeks after Frank had moved to Florida, Marie had found a note inside Frank's pillowcase from the other woman. After telling her mom, Marie decided that she wanted to move back to Texas. And once again, Beth chose her husband, staying with him in Florida, except this time, Marie had called her grandpa Jim, who was her father's dad, so Stephen's dad. She wanted to know if she could come live with him and his new wife, and he said he would be delighted to have her come stay with them. This threw Beth off because she had previously lived with Beth's parents, so it was strange that she wanted to go live with Stephen's dad and his new wife. Now, looking back, Beth thought that Marie only did this to make up for what she had done to her dad. Marie moved to Mansfield to live with her grandpa and his new wife. She enrolled in high school and did excellent. She was very eager to get involved in school activities. She became friends with a girl named Stacy. Stacy had came from an abusive background, and she felt like Marie was hiding something and that she could help her. And while the girls became inseparable, Stacy would constantly try to get Marie to talk about her father, but Marie never wanted to speak about him. Stacy said it was always like a dead-end street. One night, while the two girls were practicing their parts in Shakespeare's Hamlet, was when Marie had confessed that she had killed her father. She begged and begged for Stacy not to speak about this to anybody, but Stacy went home and told her mom, Libby, that night. Now, Stacy and Libby were really close, just like how Marie and Beth were. Libby worked in nursing education, and she thought that Marie was grieving over her father's death and made up this elaborate story. It wasn't until Libby had called the poison control and asked about barium acid that she discovered it can kill somebody by closing their throat. Libby decided not to call the police. After she had divorced Stacy's dad, she decided that she wanted to show trust in Stacy and her decision-making skills. Over the next 8 months, Stacy would have a mental breakdown. She started confining in high school students that had already graduated about what Marie had told her. She even told the high school counselor about what Marie had said and was asking what she should do, but never referred to Marie by name. She always referred to Marie as a friend of a friend. She would have nightmares about Marie chasing her through like a forest. And while Libby was still allowing Stacy to make her own decisions, she told Stacy to tell Marie a lie. Tell Marie that she confessed to a priest. Libby's thinking was that if Marie knew Stacy had confessed to a priest what Marie had done, then Marie would not hurt Stacy. In February of 1994, on the anniversary of Stephen's death, Marie's grandpa took Marie and Stacy to the macaroni grill for dinner. He later asked if Marie wanted to go put some flowers on her father's grave. Marie wanted nothing to do with her father any longer. For the next 3 weeks, Stacy kept having nightmares about Marie, and she felt obligated to tell somebody about what she had done. She went into the school's counselor and told her that she needed to contact the police about Stephen's death. It should have been simple enough that they just needed to test Stephen's blood. Blood samples are kept from autopsies that have been conducted. However, the coroner's lab did not have the machine that was required to test barium acid. That machine cost $150,000. It took the deputy chief examiner 3 months to find a lab that had this machine to test the barium acid in Stephen's blood. And then it took another few months for the test results to come back. And this particular case was not priority on Fort Worth's homicide unit's list. It wasn't priority on the list. But the longer it took the police, the more Stacy kept second-guessing herself. She and Marie had never spoke about Stephen's death again after that night. She ended up dropping out of yearbook club so that she would not have to see Marie every day. She began missing school, staying out late, partying too much. She ended up checking into an after-school program at a private psychiatric treatment center. She felt like her life was just swirling down the toilet. After the two girls had graduated, Stacy had attended Sam Houston State University in Huntsville, and Marie attended the University of Texas at Austin. They were 3 hours apart. The detective had called Stacy one night in October and let her know that they would be there in the morning to take her statement. They had gotten the test results back, and Stephen had 250 times the amount of barium acid found in a normal person's blood. Stacy was so stressed out, she ate 5 Snicker bars that night. Marie was later arrested and let out on bond. She went back to Granbury, where her mother and Frank had ended up moving back to. Marie worked as a waitress at TGI Fridays, waiting for her trial. Beth couldn't help but feel responsible for her daughter's actions. Beth stated that Marie felt trapped, and she let her feel that way. She didn't give Marie any hope. Beth used that $60,000 of life insurance money that Marie received from Stephen's death to hire 2 veteran defense attorneys, Bill Magnuson and Ward Casey, who wanted to convince the jury that Marie had no idea Barry Massite was going to kill her father. If the jury believed that Marie truly did not intend to kill her father, she would get a lighter sentence. During the trial, the once beautiful long brown-haired model like Marie now had short, nub, light brown hair. She had on loose pants and this flower-printed sleeveless shirt. And she was constantly putting her right hand up to her face, like sobbing. And any chance that Beth got, she was there to comfort her daughter. While her ex-in-laws of their family sat on the other side of the courtroom, stone-faced in disbelief, Marie's grandfather, Jim, the one she lived with, had gotten on the stand and testified that Marie should be forgiven and offered a probationary sentence. And Randall Price, the psychologist, was going to testify that Marie was not deranged, but was so consumed with remorse over her father's death that she was experiencing a vision of post-traumatic stress syndrome and unable to express her feelings. But Mr. Price was never called to testify, so it only gave the prosecution opportunity to rip into Marie. The prosecution wanted Marie to have a life sentence, and the defense attorneys begged for probation, stating that Marie would forever have to live with the guilt of killing her own father. The jury met in the middle, giving Marie a 20-year sentence. She would have to spend at least 7 years in state prison before being eligible for parole. Marie was on suicide watch for a week in the county jail. And when Randall Price had gone to see her, she had asked if there was any way that she could get her college degree while she was in prison. She was extremely eager to better herself, accept her punishment, and move on. She told Mr. Price that she had no right to complain about her own problems because she had already caused so much suffering. Marie ended up serving 7 years in prison and was released in 2003 on parole. She has changed her name since then and went on to live her life. Those close to her say that they feel she truly feels bad about all the pain she had caused and has no intentions to ever cause that type of pain or hurt again. How crazy is that? That her mother was getting ready. She was getting ready to move them to Florida, and then Marie just felt the need to go, and I know her intention was only to harm and not to kill him. However, the timing of it all. And what's also crazy is that I think had her mother of shared the fact that they were going to be moving to Florida, just how great Marie's life could have turned out with how brilliant and smart and beautiful she was. Not saying that she still isn't, but she had to basically go start over again. But maybe it was a life lesson she had to learn the hard way, that you don't always get what you want in life, no matter how far you're willing to go for it. I don't know. But let me know what you guys think. And until next time, please remember to be safe. And I will see you then. Bye.